they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread, and in prayers. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders, and all that believed were together and had all things common. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity.
Good morning, NorthPoint. Good to see you this morning. Great to see each one of you. Welcome again here. Hey, something before we get started in Acts today is that we have an annual event coming up next Sunday that we call Cake at the Cars, where we invite those of you that are new or new-ish to NorthPoint over to our house. And we like to do this in the hottest part of the year in August to test your endurance. And so it's like, if you can make it through that, you can be a part of NorthPoint Church. But no, we really just want to get to know you a little bit, invite you over. Our staff comes over as well. It's just a time to just to get some time with you. So if you're new or newish, and if we have your contact information, we've probably sent you an invite already. If we haven't, there's a code that's up on the screen. You could scan that, or the communicate cards in front of you. Just put your info on there. Say Cake at the Cars. Drop it in one of the boxes at the back, and we'll be sure to get you an invite. We love to see you next Sunday night at our house at 7 to 8:30, kind of open house style. Come or go as you please, and we would love to see you there. Well, today I just want to discourage you. I just really want to get you down. And get you depressed, hopefully. No, I don't want to do it. I want to encourage you, but I want to encourage you because discouragement is something that all of us go through at times, right? Whether it's because there's different people that are discouraging us, or there's a series of circumstances that happen or keep happening or happen again and again and again, and you can't seem to get a grip on it. Sometimes the season of the year causes discouragement. Like if you live in Iowa and you get to January and February, sometimes those are some hard days when the sun's only out for like 2 hours. We're in summer right now, but that's coming, so you got that. Sometimes, again, there's just people that you're in conflict with that just really discourage you and get you down. I wonder if you're in one of those times right now. Because I know that those of you that are here that are listening, there's probably a number of you that right now you're going through some discouraging things and you really feel it. If you're here, though, and you're not in one of those discouraging times, I don't want to be a downer, but it's coming, right? We know if you live life, it's going to happen. That's going to come. So what do we do when discouragement hits us? And that's what Paul is going to help us with today from Acts chapter 18, as we find him actually in a time of discouragement. So if you've got a Bible, take it and turn to Acts chapter 18. It's page 900 in the Bibles that are in front of you there. And here's what we've been looking at in our origin story in the book of Acts. The Apostle Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles, taking the message of Jesus to the rest of the world outside of Jerusalem at this time. We saw what we call his first missionary journey. Now we're into his second missionary journey, where he has been traveling across places like Asia, Macedonia, southern Greece. And these are the kinds of things that happened to him on this journey. When he went to Philippi, he was stripped, he was beaten, he was imprisoned, and ran out of that town. Then he goes from Philippi to Thessalonica, which we saw last week. And in Thessalonica, a group of Jews don't like him. They run him out of that town. He goes from Thessalonica to Berea. And when he's in Berea, the people from Thessalonica that ran him out, they come to Berea finding him, and they run him out of that town. He goes from Berea to Athens. And when he gets to Athens, he gets there without his main traveling companions. See, even though there was difficult times, a number of people believed in Jesus in Berea and Thessalonica. And so Silas and Timothy, his main guys, they stay in those towns to disciple and to grow the believers there. Well, Paul basically heads out on his own to Athens. When he gets to Athens, he walks around the city, and it says he's distressed by all of the idols that he sees. And so he's feeling it there, right? But he still engages with the intellectuals of the city. And we read that a few people believed, like some people believed, but a lot of people mocked him, and they made fun of him for what he was saying. Some people wanted to hear a little bit further from him, but by and large, it wasn't super successful in Athens, and he doesn't spend a lot of time there. It's kind of funny. It's like the one town he didn't get run out of. It actually doesn't seem like he spent a lot of time there because not a lot of people were responding. He heads then from Athens across west to this town called Corinth. And if Athens was the intellectual capital of the ancient world, Corinth was like a key commercial city. It was a port city that was located adjacent to an isthmus, which controlled a lot of the trade in the area. And so it was a town that was known for its diverse markets, its multicultural trade. There would be sailors and travelers from all different parts of the world that would come into that place. And because of that, it was also known for its pervasive immorality. It was a very bad place. It housed a temple to the god Aphrodite, who was the goddess of love. They had over 1,000 female prostitutes that served her in the temple and served the desires of the people of Corinth and the people that would travel to Corinth for whatever they wanted. In fact, the term Corinthian came to be synonymous with harlot. They meant the same thing. So you could imagine that if you were a woman of Corinth and you're traveling outside of Corinth and people are like, hey, where are you from? And you're like, I'm a Corinthian. People would be like, oh, you're one of those, right? That's what the name meant to people. And this is where Paul heads. After being beaten, imprisoned, run out of town, and mocked. Sounds like a great vacation, right? Like Paul's going to an all-inclusive resort in Greece to just get rest and refreshment. Not really. Because see, even though Paul was a hero in the New Testament, he's an apostle who has a calling from God, and people were responding to his message, he still had a lot of very discouraging things to deal with. And he was human. And he got very disheartened. You know how we know this is true? We know it's true because later on when he writes a letter back to the Corinthian believers, he recounts the time that he came to them, the time that we're going to look at here in chapter 18. And he says, this is how I came to you. When I came from Athens, I came this way. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 3. I came to you in weakness with great fear and trembling. Paul says, when I came to you, I was scared. I was having a hard time. I came to you trembling. I had a lot of weakness. I wasn't feeling it. Bro was down, right? And that didn't stop him from coming to them, but he was really feeling it. Then, when he gets to Corinth, let me show you a couple things that happened there. Look at verse 6 of chapter 18. It says this. But when they opposed Paul and became abusive, Paul's going to be in the synagogues talking to the Jews there. And it says they opposed him and they became abusive towards him. So he's rejected by the people of Corinth in the synagogue, the Jews at least, and he suffers abuse from them. Then this happens, look at verse 12. While Gallio was proconsul of Achaia. Achaia is southern Greece. Gallio is the Roman leader that's over that area. The Jews of Corinth made a united attack on Paul and brought him to the place of judgment. This man, they charged, is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law. So here you have an organized legal attack against Paul to run him out of Corinth and to make Christianity illegal in Corinth. How have you been doing this summer? How you been feeling, right? Anybody sue you for being a Christian? Anybody actually physically beat you up, strip you of your clothes, and put you in prison for being a follower of Jesus? Now, I don't say that to make you feel bad and to say to you, well, suck it up, buttercup. You know, whatever you're dealing with isn't really that bad of discouragement. It's all relative. You know what, like our grandparents, maybe your grandparents used to say things like this to you when you complain about getting on the school bus early. There's the classic one, right? Oh, you don't know what hard is. I used to have to walk barefoot uphill in the snow both ways to go to school, right? You get that kind of thing, start to make you feel bad, your problems aren't big. I don't say it to you to make you feel bad like that. What I'm trying to show you is that even though Paul's in the Bible, his discouragement is legitimate. It's serious, it's significant, and he is really feeling it. And yet, he was able to work through it. He was able to keep going. And in so doing, he shows us how to handle our discouragement. So how did he do it? What do you do when you get discouraged? Let's check out the story starting in verse 1 of chapter 18. We read this. After this, Paul left Athens and he went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. There's a lot going on there, right? But apparently this married couple, Aquila and Priscilla, are from a place called Pontus, but they were living in Rome, and the emperor at that time, Claudius, because we think historically because of some kind of uprising or dispute about maybe Christianity and Judaism in Rome, he kicked all of the Jews out of Rome. And so Aquila and Priscilla, who were living in Rome at the time, were kicked out, and they land in Corinth. Verse number 2, Paul went to see them. And because he was a tent maker as they were, he stayed and he worked with them. Okay, here's our first strategy for dealing with discouragement. Pursue like-minded friends. You need to pursue like-minded friends. You need some people in your life that have this combination of not always annoying you, you enjoy some similar things with them, and you pursue Jesus together. You know what I'm talking about? There's like it's spiritual friends, common affinity, and you mostly get along with them. When Paul gets to Corinth, he seeks out some fellow Jews who have also faced difficulty, who share a common trade with him. So there's this situational, spiritual, cultural work affinity that they have with each other, and so they connect over that. Aquila and Priscilla are Jews who were kicked out of Rome by the emperor, probably because they were Christians. That's something that Paul faced himself. And then they were tent makers. They set up a tent-making business, which happened to be Paul's same trade. Now, you might be like, if you've been following the story next, you might be like, well, wait a minute, where does that come from that Paul is a tent maker? What is that? We've never seen that before, right? I thought Paul was apostle to the Gentiles, and he's a full-time missionary. That's the thing that he does. What is that all about? Well, if you remember before Paul came to believe in Jesus and had that encounter with him, he was a rabbi. And as a rabbi, a Jewish rabbi, he was required to have a trade to provide for his own needs. Apparently, Paul's trade was tent making. And even though Luke, who's writing Acts, hasn't made this completely clear to us yet, when Paul would go to a lot of these towns to preach the gospel, he would practice his trade of tent making in order not to be a financial burden to the people that he was ministering to, and so that people didn't think he was just trying to get money from them or take advantage of them. So he would work his trade to provide for his food and his own needs in order to advance the gospel, because Paul always makes his decisions based on what is best for the gospel. So when he gets to Corinth, he does his job of tent making with Aquila and Priscilla. Now, what's tent making? Tent making in this day likely means cloth or leather work. So tents for sure, but also curtains and rugs and maybe clothing as well. In other words, Aquila and Priscilla set up the first J.C. Penney in Corinth, right? It's like a department store that they have there. And Paul connects with them because they're Jewish, probably Christians, and they do the same work. And look, this is just what Paul needed. And it's just what Aquila and Priscilla needed in a season of such discouragement. They mutually receive from each other, they connect with each other, and they reciprocate. Think about how much they had to talk about with each other. They both were displaced people. They had faced loss. They had faced hardship. They could look across the table from each other and be like, yeah, this happened. Yeah, me too. Didn't you feel like this when that happened? Don't you feel like you're a little bit out of sorts? Yeah. They had the same ethnic background. So they could talk about Judaism and Jerusalem and the Old Testament scriptures. But they also shared a common faith in Jesus Christ. And so they talked about the resurrection and the hope that that brings and the growth of Christianity and how God was working. And you know what else I think they talked about? Maybe curtain patterns, right? As part of their, I don't know what they talked about, but maybe they talked about curtains. Priscilla probably talked about the latest clothing styles and ideas she had. Hey, what's selling in the market? What kinds of things are people going to buy? Maybe Priscilla's like, I think black leather pants is what we should do next. I think that's going to be a big deal. And Paul's like, well, that's never going to catch on. But Priscilla knew, she knew what was coming up, right? I don't know what they talked about exactly, but probably some things like that too. Because aren't those the best friendships? When you can laugh with people 1 minute, and then you can talk about Jesus the next minute, and you can share your struggles in between that. Recently, Michelle and I were back in Indiana, and while we were there visiting family, we also got to spend some time with our closest friends that live there in Indiana. And it's just such a refreshing, encouraging time to us. Our kids were able to, they have kids, but they were able to do something else. And so we stayed at their house for a couple days, and we just, we talked, and we ate food together, and we played games. We went out to eat a couple of times, and we also laughed. And I want to share one of the things with you that we laughed about. When we were sitting at their dining room table playing games, they have a window that looks out to their front porch, and there was like a wicker chair there, and this is what we saw for 2 days sitting on the wicker chair. That's freaky, man. Like, we're sitting there playing games, and I look out, and first I thought this was a senior citizen bird. It just sort of looked, I was like, is this a very old bird? Like, I don't know, that's what it looked like. And then I realized actually it's a baby bird. And so the whole time we're playing, this bird is sitting there, and this is what it's doing. I got a video of you. This is what's happening with the bird the whole time we're playing. Yeah, that's just weird. Have you seen those BBC videos where they dub people's voices over animals and show them? And so I just imagine that one, that bird is sitting there going, ah, 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 right? So I took video of this. We took pictures. Michelle nicknamed the bird, so we were checking on the bird. We got up the next morning. The bird is still there doing his thing. We're like, what is happening? Our friends were having house showings. They're trying to sell their house. And so Jen is the wife's name. She's like, we got to get rid of the bird. That bird can't be there when people come to look at our house. So I went out and tried to shoo it off. I don't know. Came back the next day. It just reappeared right there. Just doing this all the time. Okay. So you might not think that's super funny, but we just cracked up. We laughed about that. We had like a mascot for our week, and so we laughed about the bird. We played games. We ate food. We prayed together. We cried a little bit, and we talked about life and family and church and all of those things. Look, you need this. You need this in your life. So what can you do about it? How can you get like-minded friends like that? Well, if you have it in your life, or you kind of have it, can I encourage you not to take it for granted? That's maybe the word that some of you need to hear today, is that you've had some of these, or you kind of have some of those friendships, but you've gotten busy, you've had other priorities, other things have been going on, and you've let that friendship thing sort of fall off. Maybe the word you need today from God is you need to pursue that friendship again. Maybe not with like 20 people. We can't probably do that super close with that many people, but there might be a couple, there might be a friend, there might be one person that you're like, no, I need to reinvest in that relationship. They need me, I need them. But if you don't have that yet, realize friendship it's this mix of timing and affinity and mutual pursuit. It's at least those three things. There's a timing thing to it that you don't completely control. There's an affinity thing that you can't make people like the things you like, but there's some people out there that do like and connect with the things that you like, so you don't completely control that, but that's a part of it. And then there's the mutual pursuit. You both need to be able to pursue it. Again, you can't control all of that, but you can do the pursue part. You can be looking for it, praying about it, and prioritizing it. What you can't do is give up on it, and you can't turn inward. See, in our discouragement sometimes, I think we just go inward and retreat into ourselves. We try to handle it on our own. You need some like-minded friends, or at least one. Pursue those relationships. We can't expect friendship to be like credit card offers and spam messages, right? You know those things? They come to you relentlessly every day. You don't have to do anything to get them. They just show up all the time. It would be great if friends were like that. Like, I got 1 million friends all the time. They just keep coming. I can't stop them from coming. They're just readily available to me. You know that genuine friendship, it doesn't happen like that. Friendship's more like cultivating your lawn or a garden, isn't it? Which right now is very difficult because all your grass is crunchy, probably many of you, but it takes time and effort to do a good garden, to do a good landscape, to make your property look nice. You have to plant, you have to water, you have to fertilize, you have to trim, you have to pull weeds. You have to pursue it to receive the benefit. And that's more like friendship. So whether you're in a season of discouragement or not, you need to pursue like-minded friends. In fact, this typically works better when you're pursuing these friends before the discouragement comes into your life. There's grace for this, and sometimes God will bring a person into your life in the midst of great difficulty that you didn't have before. That kind of seems to be what happened here for Paul and for Aquila and Priscilla for sure. So God can do that, but you notice also that Paul pursued it. He went to see Aquila and Priscilla and to establish that relationship. But let me ask you this. What if you were being that kind of friend and pursuing these relationships before you're in a place of need? What if that friendship has had some time to develop so that there is a depth there when discouragement comes, so that you have been a friend to the person that you now need to lift you up? Friendships are investments. And just like the advice that we get when you're young to start saving early and often, right? If you're gonna be good at retirement, save early, save often. The same thing is true about friendships. You need to pursue like-minded friends early and often. Make it a priority. Now, on the friends thing, let me just clarify two things for you on this. One, the call here to pursue like-minded friends is not a call for you to only associate with people who think exactly like you, look exactly like you, love everything that you love exactly. It isn't a call for us to only have narrow-minded, closed-minded, tribal, echo chamber, only people who agree with us on everything kind of friendships. I don't mean that, especially on non-essential issues. You don't have to agree with somebody on everything to be their friend. But when it comes to our closest friendships, I do mean people that are like-minded in loving and following Jesus more than anything else. The spiritual affinity, the heart of who we are and what we believe, being like-minded, being the same, and that is the pursuit of Jesus Christ and walking with him. Which, by the way, is essential when you're choosing someone to date or someone to marry. You know that, right? When you're looking out and you're thinking about, okay, I would love to get married someday, I'd love to date somebody, I don't know what my prospects are, and at least he's cute, or at least she's pretty, and they're a pretty nice person, they're a pretty good person. I'm not sure if they love Jesus or not, but hopefully that will work out in the end. Hopefully we'll get to that place. That's a bad route to go. It's a bad way to go. You can't expect that's just going to turn out for you, that that's going to work out. Why would you align yourselves with somebody that doesn't have the same heart that you have, the same core thing about you, your relationship with Jesus? Don't go after that relationship if they don't love Jesus too, right? And if you doubt that, if you wonder, well, I don't have a lot of prospects, so I just got to do it, there's some people at this church, I think, that would love to talk with you about that, who have lived in the grace of God and God is good to them and they love their spouse, but it's been tough. It's been really, really hard for them in that relationship. When it comes to our closest friendships, when it comes to somebody you date, somebody you're looking to marry, you need a like-minded person. The second thing to clarify is that at NorthPoint, if you're part of the body here, you're part of NorthPoint, we can't make this happen for you. We're not eHarmony that promises perfect matches all the time. So that would be cool if we did. But we can't do that. What we can do is provide opportunities, an environment where that could happen. So as we come into the fall, you're going to hear a lot more about this. And we're going to talk with you about groups that are starting, discipleship groups and community groups and Bible studies and student ministries and kids ministries and our network class that started meeting again today. All of these things we're trying to do to create an environment for the development of like-minded friendships. But you have to pursue it. You have to give it some time. And you have to be ready for some fits and starts. You know that's how friendships work, right? It doesn't always click right away. It takes the time thing and the affinity thing and the pursuit thing, and you need God to put some of that together for you as well. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, but you need to keep at it. This is the first thing Paul does to combat his discouragement, like-minded friends. We see the second thing as the story continues. Check out verse 4 of chapter 18. It says this, every Sabbath, Paul reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. So in other words, he's working his trade probably during the week, and then on Saturday, the Sabbath, he goes into the synagogue and he seeks to persuade them that Jesus is the Messiah. Verse 5, when Silas and Timothy came from Macedonia, Paul devoted himself exclusively to preaching, testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. Now, why does that happen? Luke doesn't tell us here, but later on we find out that when Silas and Timothy rejoined Paul, they brought a gift for him, probably from Thessalonica and Berea, in order to support him in his ministry. So when those financial resources came, Paul's like, okay, I don't have to do the tent-making thing now. I can just devote myself exclusively to preaching the message of Jesus. Verse 6, but when they opposed Paul and became abusive, he shook out his clothes in protest and said to them, your blood be on your own heads. I'm innocent of it. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles. And they're like, okay, wow, Paul could be bold, right? He's reminiscent here in his words of the prophets from the Old Testament scripture. His words are also reminiscent of Jesus. During Jesus' ministry, there was a time when he sent some of his followers out to preach the gospel in towns, and he said this, if any town won't receive you, shake off the dust from your feet and move on. That's in God's hands. You do your part, right? And God's got to take care of the results. If people reject you, you move on. And Paul says, I've given you the message. You've rejected it. I'm going to the Gentiles of Corinth now. But there's a little insight here that maybe you can see. It does seem to me like Paul's frustrated, right? Which is another sign that he was discouraged, that he had some struggles and some frustration going on. And this happens, verse 7. Then Paul left the synagogue and he went next door to the house of Titius Justus. That's the guy's name. And as I was studying and preparing for this, I was like, what's the correct pronunciation of this guy's name? That's the correct pronunciation of his name. But it's a little bit like when people phonetically pronounce words correctly that nobody else pronounces that way, and they sort of seem like a snob. That's what that feels like with saying his name. So that's going to be Justin this morning. So Paul left the synagogue and went next door to the house of Justin, a worshiper of God. Now, that's a bold move by Paul, right? It's not like Paul gets kicked out of the synagogue. I'm going to shake the dust off your feet. Your blood's on your own hands. I'm going across town. He's like, no, I'm going across the street, right? Right next door to you. That's like, I'm going to put my church plant right next to the church that I just left. And I said, forget you, people, because you rejected the message. Now, Paul's not being vindictive when he says that, right? Their blood is on their own heads. They've rejected Jesus, but he goes right next door. Pretty bold move. Then verse 8, Crispus, the synagogue leader. Now, here's something else about Crispus' name. In the Greek, his first name is actually Rice. Kidding. Rice Crispus. The synagogue leader, okay, so Crispus, the synagogue leader, and his entire household believed in the Lord, and many of the Corinthians who heard Paul, they believed, and they were baptized. Now, that's incredibly encouraging, right? This is the second thing you need when you're discouraged. You've got to celebrate God's work in people. Celebrate what God is doing in people's lives. Even though Paul is discouraged, he pursues some like-minded friends to do life and ministry with, and he continues at the work that God called him to do. And God does something in people's lives, right? Like, we do our part, and we trust God for the results. And sometimes God brings it. And when he brings it, we see it, and we celebrate it, because he used us to help bring that thing about. And because his hand is moving for our good. Think about Justin, first of all, here. Justin is a Roman convert who happened to live right next door to the synagogue and has a house big enough for Paul to minister out of, and he invites Paul into it. People would have no problem finding the new location. Paul put up a little sign at the synagogue, hey, if you really want to hear the message, then come over next door to Justin's house. I don't know, but people could easily find it. Then we got Rice Crispus. First of all, it makes some of the best desserts of all time. Rice Krispie treats, that probably blessed Paul a lot. And then he's the leader of the synagogue, and he turns to Jesus, even though the rest of the synagogue boots him out. Now, don't tell me that's not going to encourage you when the guy that has the most to lose, his position, his power, who he is, and he gives all of that up to follow the message of Jesus Christ. That'll lift you up, and his entire household believes. And then many Corinthians believed and were baptized. Coming off of Athens, that's pretty great, right? But there's actually more that happens in Corinth. More of God's work. Verse 12. While Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, that's southern Greece, the Jews of Corinth made a united attack on Paul and brought him to the place of judgment. This man, they charged, is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law. Now, here's something that you have to know about what's going on here. There's three groups of people involved. The first group is Rome. Gallio represents the power and the authority of Rome over all of Corinth. He's the one that's going to have to make a decision about religious matters and about legal disputes that are taking place. Then there are the Jews and Judaism. At this time, Judaism was an allowable religion in the Roman Empire. You could worship and you could follow the laws and the rules and the religion of Judaism. When it comes to Christianity, that had not been decided yet. That was still up for grabs. And so in essence, the Christians are kind of branching off of Judaism, and the Jews were like, they are not a part of us. They're not an allowable religion. Outlaw them, get rid of them. That's the legal challenge that the Jews were bringing to Gallio. Condemn them. They're not allowed. The force of Rome should come down upon them. And the Christians, for their part, are like, whatever the politics and that thing, we're just talking about Jesus. God, take care of this for us. Verse 14. Just as Paul was about to speak and give his defense, Gallio said to them, if you Jews were making a complaint about some misdemeanor or serious crime, it would be reasonable for me to listen to you. But since it involves questions about your words and names and your own law, settle the matter yourselves. I'm not going to be a judge of such things. So he drove them off. Case dismissed, he says. He's so indifferent to it, this happens. Then the crowd there turned on Sosthenes, now the new leader of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the proconsul, and Gallio showed no concern whatsoever. Wow. You can clearly see this is a victory for Christianity and for Paul. Because again, throughout Acts, the issue of whether or not Christianity is an allowable religion, that has not been decided yet. It's up for grabs. And so when the Jews bring these charges against Paul, they're trying to get Paul run out of town and Christianity banned, at least in southern Greece. But the ruling we get from Gallio ends up validating Paul's ministry and at least for a period of time giving the Christians of Corinth the freedom to practice their religion, the gospel to continue to spread in that place because of Gallio's non-ruling. He's like, don't bother me. I don't want to hear anything about this. I don't care about it, which means Paul can continue to do what he's doing, and Christians would have some protection over those trying to get rid of them. Now, this was only applicable for southern Greece, and in time when Nero particularly became the emperor of Rome, Christians would suffer great persecution. But for the time being, God granted them a great victory. Look, what we see happening in Corinth is God working through places, through people, through belief, through baptisms to encourage Paul. God even worked through a Roman leader who didn't care a bit about Christianity, because that's how powerful God is. Remember, we've seen this throughout Acts. God can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants, through whomever he wants. And Paul had to feel that. So when God does these things, we celebrate. Do you know one of the best ways for you to combat the discouragement that you're feeling in your life, or the feeling that will inevitably come, is to just plain see what God is doing. To open your eyes, to acknowledge it, to write it down, to talk about it, to sing about it, to praise God for it. Last Sunday, our church gathered on the shores of Saylorville Lake to celebrate the baptisms of a number of people from our church. Here's kind of a collage of people that were baptized, and you just see the joy and the excitement on their faces. I mean, we had kids, there were teenagers, there were men, there were women, there were adults, there were just all sorts of people there, and so many stories that these lives represent about God changing their hearts and lives and celebrating what's taking place. And one of the things to me that was the most exciting about what happened is that a number of people from NorthPoint showed up on a very hot afternoon, I think not even knowing exactly who was going to be baptized. And they just came because they said, hey, this is our church. We want to celebrate you. We want to encourage you. We want to see what God's doing, and we want to be a part of that. And they were blessed, and the people that were baptized were blessed at that time, just celebrating God's work and being encouraged. You want to endure through discouragement and start to be able to come out of it? Celebrate what God is doing in your life and in the lives of others. Because see, here's the way that this works. When at NorthPoint we move a new refugee or immigrant into an apartment and welcome them into Des Moines, you are doing that, and you share in the blessing of that. When a family here at NorthPoint has a new baby, or a new child is adopted or fostered into a family, you share in the joy of that. When we serve and care for our community, that's a part of what you're doing. When somebody comes to faith in Jesus Christ and believes and trusts in him, you had a part in that. You participate in that. One person's victory is our victory. It's our joy. And celebrating those victories is one of the surest ways of overcoming discouragement. So, what has God been doing lately in your life that you can rejoice in? Who has God been working in that you can celebrate? What do you do when you're discouraged? You pursue like-minded friends, you celebrate God's work in people, and lastly, you receive God's word. Something really interesting happens in Corinth that we haven't seen from Paul yet. Look at it in verse 11. It says this: so Paul stayed in Corinth for a year and a half, teaching them the word of God. That's a long time for Paul, if you've been following the story. A year and a half, 18 months Paul stayed there. I mean, he usually gets run out of town way before that, right? And here God protects him and allows him to stay, but he stays for a long time. The longest he's stayed in one place on any of his missionary journeys so far. Why did he do that? Why do you think he stayed so long? We'll look at a couple of verses before it at verse 9. One night while in Corinth, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent, for I'm with you. And no one is going to attack and harm you because I have many people in this city. Why did Paul stay so long in Corinth and receive the encouragement from his friends and from seeing God work so powerfully there? You know why? Because God told him to, and he obeyed. Because God spoke, and he listened to what God said. Do you know what we need to battle through discouragement? We need to receive the gracious, truthful word of our Savior. We need his truth. We need his direction. We need his presence in our lives. We need his promises, right? That was the word that Paul got from God. He first of all got direction from God. Look at the direction he gets. Paul, don't be afraid. Keep on speaking and don't be silent. This is what you need to hear. Paul, keep going. You've got this and I've got you, right? That's the second thing God says to him. Keep going. This is what I want you to do because I promise you my presence. He says, I am with you. Is there anything you need more in your life than that word from God? There is nothing you need more than that, than to hear your Savior saying, if God is for you and I, God, am for you, who can be against you? What more do you need than that? Apparently, even apostles need to hear that word sometimes because they get discouraged. And that's what Jesus says, I'm with you. Paul, I've got you. And then he gives them a promise. No one will harm you. I have many people in this city. God even had a guy in the city that didn't even believe in his existence, Gallio, and he still used his indifference to protect Paul. That's how powerful God is. Nothing's beyond the scope of God's power and ability to do. That's how sure God's promises are to us. And this is the word that you need, because you know there's a lot of voices. There's a lot of voices, and not just other people's voices. There's your voices that are going on in your head, telling you what to think and what to believe and what to feel. But there is only one true word that you need. And that word, fortunately for us, is not just a spoken word. It is a spoken word, but it's more than that. In John chapter 1, we read this, that the Word, Jesus Christ, put on human flesh, and he dwelt among us, and we were able to see the glory of God, the glory of the one and only Son from the Father, the Word, who was filled with grace and truth. And it is that Savior that came down to us that said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. Receive my grace. Receive the truth that comes from me. He said this to us in the Old Testament. He said, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. So when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you pass through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. For I am the Lord your God. I'm the Holy One. I am your Savior. You need that promise, the promise of God's direction, the promise that he is with you, the promise of his presence in your life. You know, each of these things that we're looking about here about what to do when we're discouraged, in one sense, they are something for you to pursue, something for you to celebrate, and this last one, it is something for you to receive. They're active things that we're called to do today. Think about receiving God's word, right? Receiving God's word implies that you put yourself in a place to hear God's word, that you listen, you take it into your life, and then you practice it. Like Paul, you listen to the word from God and you obey. Stay in this city, Paul. And so Paul says, God, you said it, so I want to follow what you said because that's good. So what you're doing right now, like sitting here hopefully receiving God's word, right? And taking it in, and then how do I practice this in my life? Or opening the Bible during the week or getting in a Bible study. Pursuing, celebrating, and receiving are really important. They are things for you to do. But you know what? In another sense, they're actually what God is doing. A better way to think about it would be that each of those things is a response from us towards the work of God, because God always works first. He always does first. See, in other words, you're not just working your way out of a mess, working your way out of bad emotions, trying not to be discouraged anymore. You're receiving the means of grace that God has provided for you. You're putting yourself in the path of the grace of God, so to speak. Anybody here ever been to a parade before? Like, seriously, raise your hands because it's hot and you're falling asleep. So, oh yeah, okay, good. Like, we've been to parades before, right? Parades are fun. One of the staples of parades is candy, Rice Krispie treats maybe especially, I don't know. Candy, right, at the parade. Now, here's the deal. So when you go to a parade and you're going to go to the Johnston Green Days parade or a homecoming parade or a 4th of July parade, and especially you got kids, you're like, we got to get the candy. The candy's going to happen. Let's get there early. Let's set up our spot, and let's get in an optimal position so that we can receive the candy that the parade is going to bring to us, right? Now, think about this with me. Do you bring the candy? Do you throw out the candy? Do you provide the candy? No, you don't, but you can put yourself in the best place to receive the candy. And in the same way, that's what you and I are doing by pursuing like-minded friends, celebrating God's work in people, and receiving God's word. We're just putting ourselves in the place to receive God's grace parade to us. So that's important for you to remember because it means that it's not all on you. It's not primarily on you to work harder, to do more, to get over your discouragement. Stop being a baby. Stop whining about stuff. That's not it. No. God moves in lives, and he sets things up in his timing. He changes hearts, and he brings about salvation and growth. He has spoken to us in his word to bring truth and life and encouragement. Better yet, he put on human flesh and came down so we could see what grace and truth looks like and what we need in our lives. We just need to receive what he's saying. Yield, listen, obey, follow his presence, which is all around us, so that we'll be moved by his amazing grace. So yeah, pursue like-minded friends. That's a means of God's grace to you. Celebrate God's work in the lives of other people. That's a means of grace to be moved by what God is already doing and receive his word, this word, and the word Jesus Christ, who is full of grace and truth for you. As you do that, you may not snap out of your discouragement in a quick second. It doesn't always quite work like that. But you'll be on the right path. You'll be sitting at the parade, ready to receive all the grace that God is giving to you. That path of living in the grace of Jesus. Would you pray with me?